بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا من فضلك علما نافعا وعملا صالحا متقبلا، وزدنا من فضلك حكمة وتعليما خالصا لوجهك موفقا. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا، وأنت يا حي يا قيوم تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سهلا. We'll start today, inshallah, with an actual grammar topic. So the issue here is we want to discuss the parts of speech, or the Arabic word, and what its different categories are. First of all, we need to distinguish between nahu and sarf, and the domain of nahu as well as the domain of sarf. The domain of sarf is the individual word, and the domain of nahu is speech. And where they overlap is that nahu is, of course, speech. Speech consists of words in a particular format and in a particular order, and of words of certain types. Whereas sarf, or morphology, is concerned with how the word is formed other than the vowel on the last letter. Nahu is concerned with the vowel on the last letter of the word. If we take a look, we write this word muslimun. So if we look at this word muslimun, what you see is that if we look at the meme has a dhamma on it, the sin has a sukoon, the lam has a kasra, and the last meme has two dhammas. The vowels of the first three letters are the concern of sarf. The vowel on the last letter, muslimun, is the concern of nahu. The inflection that's associated with nahu affects the final vowel in a word in general, and sarf affects all the other vowels and the letter order in the word. So sarf is concerned with individual words, and nahu is concerned with speech. So let me give you an example. If you were to imagine that you had an organization, a company or an institute or what have you, you could imagine that there would be various different people there that work. So sarf is related to, for example, you have a particular individual who works there. Sarf would be like the knowledge of who are their parents, what is their genome, what is their date of birth, and other essential biographical information about the particular word. That's the case of sarf. In the case of nahu, nahu would be concerned with what roles do the people play in the organization. Are you a marketer, etc.? The idea is that your role in a company can change, and that is what nahu is about. Nahu is talking about what the role of the word in that particular sentence is, and that's why the endings of words can change. So let's take a very simple example. If we were to say ضرب زيد عمرا, ضرب زيد عمرا, what does this sentence mean? It means that Zaid hit Amr. Okay, so we're going to change this sentence ever so slightly. So we're not going to change the word order at all. We're just going to change the inflection. So if we change this to ضرب زيدا عمر, now what does this sentence mean? Amr hit Zaid. So you notice that by changing the vowel on the final letter in Arabic, you actually change the grammatical role. So in the first sentence, ضرب زيد عمرا, you have a verb, which is ضرب, to hit. You have the subject, which is Zaid, and you have an object, which is Amr. In the second sentence, ضرب زيدا عمر, you have again a verb, but this time we put the object, the maf'ul bihi, first, which is Zaydan, and then we put the subject afterwards. Now, could you change the order of the words in the second sentence? Yes, you could, of course. But the point was to give a dramatic example of how you don't actually have to do that in Arabic, and that modifying the final vowel of a word changes the meaning of the sentence entirely. So the idea here is that in Arabic, in nahu, in syntax, the grammatical role is demonstrated by the final vowel of the word. Moving forward. So the idea here is that in Arabic, you have three types of words. The three types of speech in Arabic are ism, fi'l, and harf. So ism, we're going to call that a noun, although it's not quite a noun, because the ism in Arabic includes pronouns and adjectives. And so it's not just a noun, but when I say noun, it generally means, and we're talking about Arabic grammar, it means it's an ism. So what is an ism? An ism is something that conveys a meaning in and of itself and is not associated with time. It's a word that conveys a meaning in and of itself and is not associated with time. Like what? What would be some examples of asma? Some examples of asma would be proper names like Muhammad and Zaid. They would also include just regular nouns like tree and lion and book, kitab and shajara and asad. They also include pronouns like, for example, huwa and hiya and hum and hunna. And they also include adjectives like, for example, kareem or hasan or tawil. Now, the interesting thing about Arabic, and one of the things that makes Arabic actually quite different from English, is that in Arabic, you can use an adjective oftentimes without even having a corresponding noun that it describes, but rather the noun is implicit. So, for example, in Arabic, you could say something like, Zurtu Kariman. In this sentence, Zurtu Kariman, what one is saying in this sentence is, I visited a generous man or a generous person or an honorable man or an honorable person. And so the necessity of saying person or man after the adjective isn't there in Arabic. Furthermore, in Arabic, Zurtu Kariman can also mean I visited Kareem, a guy named Kareem. That's the ism. As for the fi'l, fi'l does correspond to the English concept of a verb. So a verb or a fi'l in Arabic is that which has a meaning in and of itself, but is associated with time, meaning whether the past, present, or future. So, for example, if we were to take a look at some verbs, kataba is a verb, and it is associated with the past tense. He wrote. Or we could say yaktubu, which is a verb which is associated with the present tense. He is writing or he writes. So in Arabic, Arabic is actually similar to English in the sense that Arabic does not have a future tense verb, but rather what Arabic and English do is you use a modifier before a present tense verb, and that indicates the future. So you could say, for example, sawfa yaktubu is how you would indicate the future. So in Arabic, there isn't a future tense, just like there isn't one in English. There's the past tense, kataba. There's the present tense, yaktubu. You can force a future sense by putting a modifier before a present tense verb. But also there is the imperative verb in Arabic, which is called fi'lul amr. Fi'lul amr would be something like writing uktub, which always indicates the future, because you don't command someone to do something except that you indicate that you want them to do it at some point after you spoke. So uktub, or the imperative verb, is associated with the future tense. Again, an ism is a word that has a meaning in and of itself and is not associated with any particular time. A fi'l or verb is a word that has a meaning in and of itself and is associated with a particular time, whether past, present, or future. And the final word type in Arabic is the harf. And the harf can be translated as a particle. It is a word that typically indicates meaning in other words. So it has a meaning, but has an incomplete meaning that doesn't stand on its own, but rather needs something else to impart that meaning to. Like what? For example, kharaja zaydun min ad-dar. Kharaja zaydun min ad-dar. So we have kharaja is the verb, to leave or to step out. So Zayd left. We have Zayd, which is the subject, and we have min and ad-dar. So kharaja, what kind of word is that? Is that an ism or a fi'l or a harf? Kharaja is a fi'l, it's a verb. Zayd is an ism, and it's the subject. And how you can tell it's the subject is because there's a dhamma. You might say there are two dhammas, but that's not really relevant. So there's a dhamma on the end of Zayd, so therefore we know that it is also the fa'il, or the subject. Min, is that an ism or a fa'il or a harf? It's a harf. Why? Because min means from, but it needs something to indicate what that fromness is connected to. And so it doesn't have a complete meaning in and of itself. We'll talk about the different types of huruf later on. So it's a particular kind of harf called a harf jar. And then ad-dar is what kind of a word? It's an ism, right? Means home in this case. So Zayd left home, or departed from the house. Kharaja Zaydun min ad-dar. As you notice here, between min and ad-dar, we have this concept that we talked about last time, which is called iltiqa as-sakinain, which is two consecutive unvoweled consonants. So min, the last letter of min is a sukoon, and the alif of ad-dar is not pronounced, because you don't pronounce the alif, you don't pronounce an alif at the start of a word without a hamza on it if you're continuing pronunciation from the word before it. We don't pronounce the lam because it's a lam shamsiyya. And dar, the dal has a shadda on it, and as you know, a shadda is a harf sakin, is an unvoweled letter followed by a voweled letter. So we have iltiqa as-sakinain. So what do? We put a fatha on the noon of min. So we say kharaja zaydun min ad-dar. So we get rid of iltiqa as-sakinain here with a fatha. Why? Because the word directly after it starts with an alif lam. Moving forward. Most Arabic words, not every Arabic word, most Arabic words are related to a triliteral root. Okay, why with a fatha and not with any other vowel? So there are many rules for how to eliminate iltiqa as-sakinain. We spoke about 3 of them last class. And in this case, if the word starts with an alif lam, then in general, what you do with the word before it is you replace its sukoon with a fatha. That's generally the case, but not always. So Arabic words are usually, or most rather, are related to a root word that consists of 3 letters. In the book on page 22, it says that they're associated with a root verb. It's not necessarily a verb. It can be an ism as well. So they're related to a root, a triliteral root consisting of 3 letters. So much of the time, whenever you look at a word and you want to know its meaning, you try to find its root word. So for example, if we were to look at the word Muslim, what is the 3-letter root of the word Muslim? It is the sin, the lam, and the mim. And so, for example, if we were to look at another word, like, let's do a little bit of a tough one. When we say in the Quran, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. So if we were to look at this word nasta'in, the 3-letter root here, that's a little bit of a tough one. Ayn ya noon, very close. It's ayn waw noon. But the waw becomes a ya because of a sarfi consideration. So here, if you can imagine that root words follow this pattern called fa'ala. If we look at this fa'ala, not every word, but we'll imagine that all words that we're interested in for now have 3 letters. And the prototype that we use is a fa, a ayn, and a lam. Fa is for the first letter, ayn is for the second letter, and lam is for the third letter. So in the case of, for example, Muslim or Salima, we say that the root is Salima. So we'd say, in this case, which letter is in the place of the fa for the root word Salima? Which letter is in the place of the fa? The sin. Why? Because it's the first letter. Which letter is in the place of the ayn, the lam, and which letter is in the place of the lam of fa'ala, mim? So these 3 letters correspond to the word fa'ala. So when we say something like, for example, fa'il, if we say something follows the form of fa'il, then with salima, what would that correspond to? What word would that correspond to? Salim. And if we were to say something follows the form of muf'il, then in the case of salima, what word would that correspond to? Muslim. And now if we look at this word, the root word awana, nasta'in is following the form of nastaf'ilu. So you might say that it should be nasta'winu, and you would be correct in assuming that, except that there are some things that are happening in sarf that we'll learn later that stop it from being nasta'winu and make it nasta'in. So basically, most words in Arabic are related to a triliteral root, which isn't necessarily a verb. If we drill down into a little more detail of the Arabic noun or the ism, how do you know if something is an ism? And so we're going to talk about something which is called a alama in Arabic. And we're not going to complete it today, but we'll start with this concept. So there's something that's called a alama in Arabic, and it's different than a shart. So the word shart approximately means a necessary condition. And the word alama doesn't mean a sufficient condition, but we're going to pretend it does because it's a pretty good working definition for it. So there are things called necessary conditions, and there are things that are called sufficient conditions. A necessary condition is something that has to be there, but doesn't necessarily imply that that's the only condition. So for example, it is a necessary condition for someone to be the president of the United States. It's necessary for them to be at least 35 years old, or at least that was the case. It's also a necessary condition that they be born in the United States, that they cannot have acquired citizenship, for example, through immigration or what have you. In any case, these are necessary conditions. So does it mean that if you're 35 years old, that you can become the president of the United States? No, not if you are a Canadian citizen and not a US citizen. So that's a necessary condition. Being 35 is a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition. A sufficient condition means that that's all that is actually required. For example, if you were to say that you say the shahadatain, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna muhammadan rasulullah, while believing in them and not believing anything that contradicts them, that is actually a sufficient condition for you to be a Muslim. So a sufficient condition means that that in and of itself is enough. A necessary condition means it has to be there, but it's not enough on its own. So shart is a necessary condition. Alama is not really a sufficient condition, but it works if we translate it that way. So what we're going to talk about next class, inshallah, is what are the alamat, what are the signs or sufficient conditions of something being an ism. So we'll stop there and continue next class. هذا وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والله تعالى أعلم وأحكم وهو حسبنا ونعم الوكيل. السلام عليكم.